believe he was a character from DC. I mean, DC characters are stupid.
Yeah, they have like 100 of them. So.
Yeah, and that's the joke. It's like it's made and directed by the same guy that did Guardians of the Tim Gunn.
James
Gunn. Tim Gunn is make it work. But so he's alternating now between like Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy and then like DC, because he did the new Suicide Squad, which I did not want to give him credit for because the first one was stupid and I hated it. And then like they came out and like they're rebooting it this quick, like they know they failed, but geez.
And the second one was pretty good.
And it was pretty good. I mean, it's very similar to like a Guardians of the Galaxy type of thing, like a bunch of goofballs, like they mix like comedy and action at the same time. Pretty good. But yeah, he needs to stick with these. Like Peacemaker, the TV show, is 100 times better than the Guardians of the Galaxy reboot.
Well, speaking of reboots, that's actually a pretty nice segue, because that's what we're doing. We're rebooting our campaign. Bill, I'm so stoked that you actually get to jump in on this conversation, because I think it'll be fun for you to actually hear like what we're talking about, because the purpose of this conversation today is, and I wish we would have done this before, but Eric and I did like an impromptu character workshop session for the Deep and Creeping Darkness campaign that we did. And for me, it was a lot of fun, and I got a lot out of it. So I wanted, before we get too far into the story that you're running, Bill, I wanted to do this again with all of us and just workshop the characters, because we're kind of replaying them. I feel like we've learned a lot, played a lot, and talked a lot about different, concepts and ways to develop and add depth to characters. So I thought it'd be cool to just have a session to talk about our characters a little more in depth, or like 2.0 versions of them. I wanted to get into like the backstories a little more. I've changed mine quite a bit, so I also want to hear how yours have shifted and adapted. We've talked about forging knives. Mark wrote a great article about that. So I pulled on that to like, okay, well, how can I start applying some of this stuff and give Billy some knives that he can use in the campaign? And lastly, since we are playing a longer term campaign, I wanted to see like, what are your thoughts on how your character is going to grow over time? And, have you thought about that? And like, what are some ways you're going to bring that into your role playing? So that was kind of the nature of today's like discussion of, why I wanted to assemble. How does that sound to you guys?
Sounds good. Sounds fun.
Is there anything you want to like add to it or flesh out? I think that's
No, I mean, I had kind of internally done that in order to try to just tighten up my character. So I think it's a great idea.
Cool.
And I also like didn't want to get too specific, because I do want to play off of everybody else. So
yeah,
I think it's a really good idea.
Yeah. Well, there's so much that like we've been doing in discussion, and I really wanted to like, I don't know, be able to like go through the messy process of talking about this, because it's been fun when we do it. But now we're in a place where we can actually record these and share these with others, so other folks can kind of see like what goes on when you're making a party and making, and actually trying to pay attention to creating deeper characters. So Eric, do you want to jump on this first and kind of give us with Xyzel his backstory and sort of like the things that formed him?
Yeah. So I'm trying to find my notes on I'm pulling up. I had to go into Roll20 to find my character sheet, and I don't think it bio and info. That's just a picture. I can do most of it from memory.
And then Bill too, like I know since you're DMing and not having like a character, please jump in at any point with questions, perspectives, whatever. Like I'm glad you're in this conversation, and like insert yourself wherever you see fit.
I'm just I'll give my input if I see. I'm also just kind of gonna be a fly on the wall and listen and see if I get any ideas, because if you guys have something that you guys really like, I can secretly play off of it and put it in. I don't want to be like, that's a good idea, I'm going to add that, because then it's going to be added. But you never know.
If Bill mutes his camera feed, that he's like,
if I just immediately go
hiding his emotions.
Typing.
Yeah.
All
right. So Xyzel's background, it's pretty unchanged from the first time we played. I think I thought of something cool, so I changed like one thing about it. So he grew up in the street what's the name of the town that we started in?
Harborton.
Harborton. I want like whatever big city like we start from is where I wanted him to just be like part of that city. Because I feel like far too often we're always like fish out of water and we like enter into the city and no one knows where anything is. And like I don't know. I've done that a ton of times, so I wanted to do something different. I don't know how it will work. Like if we end up playing more in the city, I'll just have to ask Billy a bunch of stuff. Like I should know this. What should I know? Kind of thing. But I feel like it could be a cool way to flesh out not only like the backstory of my character, but the city in general. Instead of us not knowing anything about it, Zeisel should know about it.
And I think that makes the world like more lived in for him too. Like this is a place he's familiar and comfortable with.
Yeah, and like if you think that you should know it, you can always just say, "Is this something Zazel would know?" And then I can either say yes. You can roll like an intelligence check or some some sort of a check, or I could just, if it's simple enough that like, oh yeah, everybody would know that if they grew up in the city. Like
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I went back and forth on like wanting, I don't know, because he's an urchin is his like actual background. I don't remember, but I thought he had something. I have so many windows open.
Yeah, and also make sure to read like the class and the race and stuff too.
Yeah, I forget that we're going like full back to like no one knows about this because I tend to forget that I'm not just talking to you guys.
Yeah, we should maybe put the character sketches up too. Actually, now I'm thinking about it because we've been working on looks as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, on the main page, I don't know if we have. We should post the character sheets, the pictures, kind of everything to go along with it. I haven't in a while, but I play in Hero Forge kind of a lot, so I've like been tweaking him a little bit. Hero Forge is really fun because like he has a +1 crossbow, so I went in and made it like a little nicer, like
molding.
Yeah, and like just made now that instead of just regular wood, they have like polished wood. So I was like, okay, +1 polished wood, easy. I don't know if so Zeisel is a goblin bard. I've never really played a bard, so I wanted to play one. And I didn't want him to be like the classic like singer performer. I wanted him to be a stand-up comedian. I based a decent amount of him off of damn, I can never remember his name.
That one funny guy.
Yeah,
he's the most famous goblin comedian.
John Goblican?
John Goblican. Hang on, I'm on.
Just go to johngobligon.com.
Do you know who John Goblican is, right?
No.
Have you heard of that guy? He's the lead singer of Necrogoblicon.
That guy.
He does interviews with like famous people.
Yeah,
he has his own website. It's almost like Between Two Ferns.
Yeah, what's it called? Like what's now with John Goblican?
Yeah, it's worth watching. It's absolutely amazing because he interviewed Wes Moreland from what was that Limp Bizkit, and he just makes fun of Limp Bizkit the entire time he's interviewing him.
Yeah, I've watched a few. I actually genuinely like their music.
Yeah, it's also very good.
He's not the singer. The singer's name is Scorpion, and he's just a guy. But he is their like mascot.
Is he related to Sting?
Yeah. Sorry.
What?
So isn't he related to Sting?
Stinger. He's not Sting. He's not stung. He's not stinging. He's Sting. Is that from a Dana Carvey bit from Comedy Central in like the 90s?
Yeah, I remember that one.
The one he sings about chopping broccoli.
Chopping broccoli.
Yeah, I remember that one too.
Super funny.
And
buy me that useless piece of
figures.
plastic. Yes, I want it.
Yes. That's...
Okay, so
I don't know why. It's like 20 years ago, but I could still fucking quote a stand-up
special. Chopping broccoli. I still say that whenever I'm cutting broccoli.
Are any of those jokes funny even? Like, I need to go back and rewatch it and see if...
Yes, Dana Carvey is a mastermind.
I remember my parents thinking it was funny. I thought it was just good. Everybody thought it was funny.
I miss Dana Carvey.
I think he has a podcast with David Spade.
Ooh,
I just saw.
That's good.
That's appropriate.
I mean, who knows
Yeah.
if it's
Is it called chopping broccoli?
All right, back to Zeisel.
You have to spell that out. Chopping broccoli with
.com.
.com.
That would be great. All right, so back to Zeisel. So I based part of him off of Lenny Bruce, who I apologize, I can never remember his name. But I have very little experience with like real life Lenny Bruce, so I like the impetus or like the like founding nugget is from the character Lenny Bruce from Marvelous Miss Maisel. But what I wanted was like, so he grew up an urchin. The way that I see it, like goblins in this world are pretty common and not necessarily like evil, quote like they are in like traditional D&D, but they are like an underclass. So a lot of times, at least in like our world and country, like one of the only ways like underclass can kind of rise to prominence is through performance. So, you know, you get like jazz performers or different things like that, and then you get comedians. So Zeisel was, you know, grew up small, grew up kind of weak. And so the only way that he could like survive the streets was with a quick wit, a quick tongue, defuse situations, like get friends on his side by like through comedy. And then the only way he could really like go on the offensive was like to roast people. So he survived like childhood and everything, and like scrimping, scraping by, just on his wit, like no strength, no violence really. And then a lord or like vassal of a lord kind of discovered him in an inn, you know, just being the funny man, and offered him a job as a court jester. So this is like the first time in Zeisel's life where his like belly was full, where he had like a consistent place to sleep, probably the best time like of his life. And it lasted for, you know, maybe a year or two. And then, so I don't understand how bard powers work, to be honest. Like wizards make sense, sorcerers make sense, warlocks and clerics, all of their powers make sense. Bards are just like, I don't know why it happens. But I actually think that this is, and I don't know if I want to talk about it now or if I want to talk about it in character.
We could, because okay. I wanted to do like a hijack of the show and like introduce this Lord Wizard Claws. And we could just like, this is the Lord Wizard Claws variety show. Welcome. We're going to talk about ourselves.
We could do that. That could be fun. I didn't know if I wanted, because I was gonna send like somebody a message to be like, ask Zeisel at some point how his powers work.
Well, I think that could be a natural conversation we have, because like Lord Wizard Claws is magical. Umrin has Key, which is magical in a sense.
Yeah, he, you know, is a lord, or he's a jester in a lord's court, living the highest life he's ever lived, and he kind of accidentally, viciously mocks somebody because he's been roasting. He's kind of a comedian, and he just says things, but instead of making somebody laugh, it hurt them. And he doesn't know like how that happened. But, you know, a lowly jester basically striking a lord and like causing them like legitimate physical harm. He was beaten and stripped of all his like, I don't know, not like titles because he didn't have any, but stripped of like his rights to be in the court and thrown out onto the streets. So he went to the Adventurers Guild basically for a job. Like it's like kind of unemployment line. So the things that I struggle with this character are, he doesn't necessarily want to be an adventurer, but he might just be good at it. And that might turn into like, oh, okay, I'm good at this. He didn't necessarily want to be a stand-up comic, but he was just good at it. So like falling into those things and just naturally being good at them, I think is kind of an interesting turn.
One thing that I'm curious about for all of our characters, and this one thing that I struggle with too, is just like going to the Adventurers Guild. Like, what is his drive? Like, what pushes him forward to kind of like do these jobs? Like, what's his, like, what is he trying to attain in his life at this point?
He needs to pay the rent.
Okay. He makes it ends meet.
Yes, it is a very like, this job will pay me. I will do it. And I mean, even like in the beginning of this game, it's a courier mission. Like, he doesn't really expect it to be like a grand adventure, and he doesn't really want that. Now, when that happens, he may get excited about it, but when you're on like the lower rung of society, you're not worried about these grand, like, I want to be the best swordsman in the land. He wants to pay rent. Like,
very pragmatic.
He's very pragmatic.
So if he, as a character, is very pragmatic and he's scrappy, sounds like, you know, became a stand-up comedian because it's efficient, best use of what I have for the fastest route to more comfort. Does that mean, are you as the player, like, is he open to changing over time mechanically? Or is that kind of just more RP stuff you're thinking of? Since this will be a longer campaign.
Yes. So
I don't know. Are you leaning towards like multi-classing potentially if he decides he's good at fighting, et cetera, et cetera?
That's a good question. I was thinking the same thing about our characters as well.
Yes, he is open to it. So again, like, him being a bard, I think has just been his like natural life thus far. Like, he hasn't like trained to do it. He hasn't like dedicated his life to, like, bard colleges are weird because I don't know, are they a real college? Like, is a brick and mortar like ITT Tech over in the corner? Like,
he did distance learning.
Yeah,
it's cheaper.
This is who he is, and it just so happens that like it falls into this class. Again, I was playing in Hero Forged, kind of tweaking him, and they released some new like outfits, and I just like clicked them, and I was like, "Ooh, that looks tight." I think he very easily could go in any direction, and I don't have a plan for him, which is kind of exciting because like this is one of the first like longer form things we've done in a while. If we are going to do this campaign and continue doing like more and more down the line, I do kind of want to see where he goes. So he doesn't necessarily, again, he doesn't have the goal to be like the best comic or the best swordsman or like be a lord or any, like, he's pragmatic, which might get me into trouble because one of my flaws as a player is I feel like I kind of forget my characters and I just play what's like the most, like, scenario wise, like what's the most interesting or what's the most fun at the time, or what's the, like, what's actually going to work. So I need to drill down a little more on like his flaws, his bonds and stuff like that, so that I can use those as like a dowling rod to kind of find where he goes.
And it sounds like you've left yourself enough open-endedness though for him to grow too. I think sometimes like if you establish the arc ahead of time, it's like, well, that's not cool.
Yeah, like with Arik, like she had a goal. She wanted to be a bounty hunter, so she needed to get a ship to get off planet. Like that might take several campaigns for that to happen, but that is her goal. Zeisel's goal is like, I need to make money so I can pay the rent. And if other things fall in his lap, he's like, oh, okay, well, this works too.
That's really more my job in that I need to make sure that motivations match up with your character motivations, in that like having a more risk-averse character, which is what Zeisel is, because he doesn't really want to do things for the glory or the honor. You know, he's doing the bare minimum he can do to make as much money as possible. And so, like, this is where me as a DM comes in. I mean, that's honestly his motivation is.
Yeah,
like,
no, it's funny when, like, the way you phrase it, the bare minimum to make as much as possible. It's very smart and pragmatic.
Yeah, exactly. He's very pragmatic. especially, and he comes from an unaccredited bard college,
Flimsy credentials at best.
Yeah, exactly.
He's been attending via astral projection during the recent curses. So
yeah, the recent wave of curses. Bill, one thing I did want to ask you though, Bill, is like we've traditionally played in games where money is just not something that is impactful. Mm-hmm. It would be kind of cool knowing that like this is a significant driver for Xyzel. Like, how can the world adapt to that? We're now, because also like a similar thing is true for Lord Wizard Claus as I honed his story. So it would be kind of cool if like, okay, maybe currency is something we focus a little bit more on and just at least to experiment with it.
Yeah, so for sure, I plan on to make currency more valuable in that you don't get more, you get less random loot. And so if you want something, it's not just like you're going to open up a treasure chest and it's not going to be Link holding up a new sword, It's going to be, oh, I want that. I need to buy it with money. I
perhaps you could create it.
Yeah, I usually sway away from a lot of the micromanaging of money because nobody likes that. It's just like micromanaging of ammo, like especially when you're dealing with like when you're dealing with high amounts of gold. Like nobody wants to keep track of copper and silver to buy ale. Nobody wants it.
Yeah. But if every 4 sessions we have to pay rent. That might be something like, oh, did we get enough to cover our expenses?
Ironically, I kind of do have interest in that, but I just rolled a monk, so
low overhead. That's what I hear.
Like level 1, it can be fun, especially like when you start out and you're all super, super poor, and you literally get like 10 gold or something, and you have to do everything with it. That's a fun like campaign, but like once you guys are a certain level, that micromanaging stuff of is not as much fun, but definitely for somebody like a Lord Wizard Claus, where he has a high standard of living, I would assume, where he wants a high standard of living. Like that's kind of his. We haven't talked about him, but like you can just kind of tell by the character. He doesn't want to just pay the rent. He wants to have a,
it's the posh accent.
Yeah, it's exact and things like that. And luckily, like the DM's guide has things about like the daily cost of living at a certain level. And so like we can start factoring because like it becomes not insignificant. Like, ale costs or buying, mead or a bowl of soup from an inn is insignificant. But like, it's just like like
plus, magical item or something.
And I think that's fair because in some live plays and stuff I've seen, sometimes I feel like the DM gets put in a position where it's like, I would like to do something like create a very special piece of gear. We're going to work on that mechanic. We fast forward 3 months so we don't have to sit here doing nothing. But as a player, I feel like I ought to give something up because you're doing me a favor. So if the trade-off is 2 gold a day to live in this quality of life times 30 days is how long it's going to take you. I feel like to me, that makes a lot of sense. And it makes me feel kind of more fair as a player.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I think as we grow as our table, I think experimenting with some of this stuff, I like the idea of being able to buy the stuff we want as we collect and go. Cause like for me, the real reward during the each session is the journey itself.
And the friends we make along the way.
And the friends we make along the way. And the memories we share. So then, being able to buy what I want at the end because I got enough money to do it, that still scratches the itch. And even better, because like I wanted this and not this other thing that you gave me that was random.
Exactly. Yeah. And we've never played a game really where there's been like merchants. Like, all right, if I want something specific, let's say, I want a +2 crossbow, whatever.
Go to Fantasy Costco.
Yeah, but so the thing is, like, not necessarily Fantasy Costco. Like, not every merchant might have that. Like in small towns, they're not. So like
a quest is needed.
Yeah, it's a little journey in itself. Like if I want to find a specific piece of thing, like we may have to go to the capital or whatever. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I like that a lot more than I do like getting random loot because that's D&D. Like. You find a random magic thing and you're like, what the hell is it? Or whatever. It could be even its own MacGuffin, like that leads you down the next path.
Yeah. There's a ton of fun magical items that would be cool to explore.
There's so many like cool ones that aren't necessarily even like armor or like damage doing that are just like, what could we do with this?
I hope go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I was going to say that's absolutely the kind of random stuff, because like the odds are in your normal adventuring to come across the key weapon that everybody would want, or a goblin-sized set of armor and or a perfect set of wizard cat robes, is just not going to happen. Like,
low
it's
probability.
Just not, like, I will say right now, and if there's no reason to have goblin-sized armor in there, you're not going to find goblin-sized armor. Like, and it's not going to be like, oh, you find a set of armor, because armor is fitted. Like, you can find the armor, and then you're going to have to like go to a place. You can't just put it on right away, because it has to be fitted. Like, those kind of things I like, because it takes like an extra step of, I got this. What do I do with this? Like, this is cool. Like, do I, so I absolutely like that kind of thing of, and even like if you want an item, like even if the merchant is there, like there can be steps to buy it. You know, it could be a shortage, or he could, oh, I promised this to this guy. I'm sorry. Like, maybe you'll have to go talk to this guy to see if you can, you know, maybe outbid it from him or something like that. So like, there's always little events that you can have that keep things interesting, to get the things that you want, because it's really nice, like when you're going to a dungeon, to find, you know, plus, you know, the next best weapon that I have, you know, I have a +1, now it's a +2, like, and I just find that kind of stuff unrealistic, and that, like, it can happen, but I really like exactly what you're talking about, like random magical items that they've been using that like you would never think to have. Like, that's the kind of fun stuff, is something that I would never have thought that I would want. And you're like, how can I use this? Or is this cool? Or it's just like randomly something that like,
no, it makes sense. Like, and as a DM, you have to think like, what would this, like if you're in a dungeon, what would the people and the leader in this dungeon have? So if none of them, like you said, none of them are goblins, they wouldn't have goblin armor.
Yep.
Like, if they're an evil wizard, they're going to have a cool evil wizard staff, but they might not have +1 rapiers. Like,
halfling rogue though might be able to swap armor with
exactly.
a goblin.
Yeah, I was thinking like, let's
wiggle
go
a little bit
and find mithril from the.
Speaking of magical weapons, though, sorry, go ahead, Bill.
I'm just saying, like, sized, like, a properly sized character. I'm not saying, like,
of course, yes,
sure.
yes.
Where did Zeisel get his +1 crossbow?
He fucking bought it.
Okay, just bought it with the money that. Yeah, okay.
Yep. Exactly. So, all of his attire. I mean, I'm trying to figure out how to post on Roll20 his new updated character thing. But I mean, he's got like a barred shirt, nicer gloves. Like, all of the stuff he is wearing and he purchased with the money he made being a court jester. Like, there's no grand story of like, my father left me this.
He pulled himself up by his bootstraps, and
exactly. He thought it was cool. Lords and like cool people have rapiers and they have crossbows, so he has those. Like, he wanted to try to fit into that upper level of society.
Awesome.
They would more than likely never accept him because of like who he is. But he wanted to see, or he wanted to be accepted, to be honest.
So is that like something, maybe like part of his like bonds, flaws, ideals, and traits? Like, does that kind of trickle into there?
I think it could. So Bill said something about wizard claws, about wanting to live on a high level, like live on the high horse. I think Zeisel has gotten a taste of that, and he definitely doesn't want to go back to poverty.
Yeah. Cool.
That's cool.
Anything else?
Like that also gives you a lot of room, because like he got very close to the high horse, so he saw what good was, but never actually got it for himself.
Yeah. Anything else that drives Zeisel, or anything else you want to highlight before we move on to Umrun?
I think that pretty much sums him up.
What should the party know about Zeisel as we adventure together?
Well, I don't want to tell you now.
Well, I guess like what should the party know that, like, I don't know. It's kind of an open-ended question.
So I mean, for you guys, metagame mechanically, when we first played, he was College of Swords, I believe. So he was like he'll get in there and mix it up. And he is not that guy now.
Okay.
I didn't think that really fit with him. But I felt I didn't feel like the Bard colleges really were. I don't know. I wasn't impressed by any of them. The one he is now, College of Eloquence, is much more him. So he is not going. More than likely, I think it'll take a lot for him to like run in and stab somebody with his sword. He is much more a not a defense player, a like Bill said, like risk adverse. Like I'll shoot some arrows, I'll sling some words. But if that guy's coming at me, I'm nimbly escaping out of there.
Yeah, and he's got the skill set for that.
Yes.
Very cool. All right, Mark, do you want to give us a little the nitty gritty on Umrin?
Yeah, so I reworked Umrin, mostly because I feel like I made a character originally that was attempting to cover up all of my insecurities as a player. And it's like, oh, he's a fish out of water, and he doesn't talk much, and he's kind of doesn't like anybody, and he's a loner. And then that way I don't have to like be a full-fledged member of the role playing.
Because I mean, it's been like 2.5 years since you started this character, so like you've grown tremendously as a player and as a DM. So this is really exciting to hear about.
Yeah, so I actually, oddly enough, did a mix of. I read it as backstory, but I did a mix of taking away a lot and then adding more. I think in other aspects. Before I had literally written things. I wrote a long thing. Some of it I don't think I even showed you guys. And then even within his bio, I was trying to designate things that everyone knew up front, things that were secrets he would like withhold. And I was like way too into it. Like into the details, I mean.
Yeah.
So what I did was kind of open a lot of that up and try to leave some space for those plot points and knives and things for Bill to grab onto without being like so pedantic and like this is what you should use or this is, you know, a very, very specific thing.
Like being too prescriptive. Like use this knife at this point because...
Yeah, so like originally I thought of him as, you know, he's run away from home, classic D&D kind of thing. Like, so in my head originally I was thinking like, I don't know, it could be cool if maybe somehow he gets drawn back there and then has to like fight with the people that he grew up with or something. So like I still like those kinds of possibilities of the backstory really having an impact on the game, but I opened that way up. Like I don't feel the need to define what it is. I kind of want to see and let that be, you know, some sort of surprise or like if Bill, you want to make up stuff about him, like I'm way cool with that. And that would be cool. Whereas before I think I might have been like, well, but I had this idea already. So basically what I did for him is that you know, he was a comfortable person as growing up, not like super rich. He wasn't the son of the head of some kingdom or anything like that anymore. However, they did have some sort of his family stood out because they had access to a lot of the materials that were needed in order to make potions and things to help a specific curse. And essentially his leaving home is because, you know, as an idealistic young man before he was very religious, still felt that draw to help people. So he basically stole a bunch of this stuff and tried to run and be like, here you guys go. Which ostracizes him from his family and also kind of put him in a position where rather than kind of being a savior who showed up, he kind of made a mistake because he put himself in a position where he could help people for as long as he had that stuff. But then he actually had no true knowledge about healing. He had no knowledge of what these people were or, you know, really their cultures or anything like that. So then I wanted to give him kind of that internal struggle of why did he end up becoming a monk? Other than I kind of wanted somebody mechanically who could fight and heal a little, because that's where I was coming from as a player. So to make that make sense, I gave him the backstory of having to go to a different culture, being taken in by some dwarves, because those were kind of the first people that he met, and was like, hey, I can help you guys. And they're like, cool, you can stay with us, like Mr. Magic Man with your potions and all this. But then, a knife there is that brings attention to people who didn't want it. And he became almost, like a pariah because he ran out and then couldn't lay hands on anyone, couldn't do anything except use the stolen stuff. And then people are like, well, you never helped my village. And then potentially there's evil people who are like, we're coming for you guys because you have him. We don't understand how he works. We think he's magic because he stands out in the underdark or underground kind of deal.
What was the thing that was preventing the family from like helping others that made him decide to like take the ingredients or take the potions to do that thing, like against their wishes?
So that's one of the things I vagued up a bit. Very originally, it was like, I feel like very classic Dungeons and Dragons. I was like, they were racist. They, like, everyone in the underground was kind of different and literally like dirty to them, and they were elitists, and that's that. But I'm definitely open to more like fun and nuanced things than that, and that removes any, I thought, ability to return to his past without it being just a confrontation, and that's not realistic. And especially when I start thinking about a character and how I want to play him as not a just straight dichotomy, and he can't be too confusing. Like, why would you seek to heal everyone but your own problems? He's not that ignorant of his own past, and he's not that kind of arrogant monk who's like, whoa, like, I am me, my religion is the thing, I am a crusader. His thing is more, he always had the ideals of like, I believe any faith is valid to you. He doesn't push his things on other people, and it's also one of the reasons I gave him kind of a new hook, which was while he was with those dwarves, eventually they asked him to leave. Again, I had prescribed how that conversation went, but now I'm just kind of thinking like, we don't know how that went. But he did leave. And when he left, he took a new name, Umran, and a true faith in the god of those dwarves, which was Clangeddin Silverbeard. So we know that it wasn't a negative interaction. Like, he was able to get something out of it, and things that feel kind of honorary. So he was able to do some good, but just not as much as he wanted. He wasn't a failure, but he didn't totally succeed. So then from there, he was like, I think I have to commit to a faith, and if I can do that, I will be able to lay hands eventually in the way that, would be beneficial to everyone. And in the back of his head, he's thinking also kind of, they came for me when I couldn't help them. So maybe if I can help a little more, that will also protect me and the other people that I come into contact with.
So is it accurate to say he's kind of on a path of growth and redemption in a sense?
Yeah. And I always wanted him to have that kind of potential for some sort of redemption. But I feel like my goal with this rewrite was kind of to make it less necessary. Like, he doesn't need to come from a super dark place to be the hero of anything. It's more just kind of like, man, if I am inadequate, I should work on that, in much more of a human kind of character than a Dungeons and Dragons only kind of character.
For sure. Yeah, it's. I mean, we live in a world of grays, not black and white. D&D is a world of grays, not black and white. So that's why I think we've all had that discussion of like the virtuous, white knight is boring and stupid. Uh, if unless you play like unless you do it right, like you can do one, but you're going to understand it. He has grays. It's just how he like if he is true white, like 100%, there's no it's this way or nothing. Like he's going to have internal conflict a lot because that's not how the world is. He could be that way, but you have to play that off. I think that's a cool like way to make like a virtuous character isn't a boring character. Like nobody like misguided virtue has done as much harm as anything in the world, and that's a really cool thing to say. Like, and a lot of times somebody that it means well and just keeps messing things up. You can do two different paths. You can learn to think before you act and stay on that virtuous path and get better at it, or you can kind of become jaded and lose that virtue over time. And I'm interested to see which path, and I do not want you to tell, and I don't think that it's a good idea.
Know, honestly.
Exactly. I think at this point it's saying like, oh, he's definitely going to go through and he's going to be redeemed. I'm just waiting for the time where he is. But like that is those kind of like opening, and it could be somewhere in between where he's just like he does better, but he becomes more of like that the realistic, champion. Like you see those guys in like the movies and they're always like the guy that's like, no, we need to help, but we need to help. We can't just charge them head on, like when the hero and the protagonist wants to, and they're the bad guy because they're holding back the hero. But like, is being pragmatic make you bad? Like, so it's always like they're always viewed in popular culture as being a hindrance to the true hero, this pragmatic person who is not a true believer. And I don't know. I think those characters are more interesting and usually better.
I think it'll be fun because I have the space, like, and he needs to fight, especially in our group mechanically.
Yes, he does.
And
a lot.
Absolutely.
So then I was thinking, like, monks and D&D fight, that's a thing. But just story wise, I started thinking like, okay, like if I want to run around and be like, oh, I'm a champion of all people and I want to heal the sick and wounded, why the fuck am I bashing them with a quarterstaff?
That might also offer some opportunities like to avoid combat or resolve combat encounters before they happen or diffuse them or something.
Yeah. And it's kind of a defensive god in a way because his thing is about, he appreciates the fight and the battle in order to shield people. But at the same time, he wants to see you crack heads. So like get in there and I smile upon your, violence if it is righteous.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, not every fight has to end in death either, Yeah. That's another call that you can make as you're playing in the group. I did want to know what brought Umran to the Adventurers Guild.
That's honestly one of the things that I kind of struggled with. That and a flaw that doesn't sound like you're in a job interview where you're trying to make yourself look good. Like my flaw is I picked like I'm obsessed with completing a goal or something. So I mean he's not necessarily like on the run, which is kind of my original plan anymore. And he's on some sort of kind of self-discovery journey, I guess we can call it. He's also no longer like looking for a monastery or anything to specifically go to and stay at. So I kind of did, I think, remove some of his reasons for doing this, other than like, I was thinking he's new to some of these things, kind of. So maybe it's best to just like, I don't know, practice a bit and like also he has the religious angle from Clangaden, so it could also just have to do with, you know, I need to spend some time pleasing my God, which means going out to find someone to help out and, you know, practicing my strategy in battle and that kind of thing. So that I think is where I'm really weak right now.
Do you guys have any ideas of ways that Mark could kind of shift or tweak or massage that path?
Or like potentially, you know, he's doing Way of the Open Hand, but, you know, do they have a problem with the fact that he worships Clangaden? Those, you know, potentially are not entirely compatible things. So maybe, you know, it's like this might put him too on line with everyone else, but that might be a good thing. Is like, was he at a monastery that was not appreciative of his appreciation of other faiths? Has he been asked to leave somewhere again? Like, are we starting over again?
That could be interesting.
But then that kind of puts him in the same position where, like, I need to make some money to get a house to stay at.
Or is there any chance he would want to open his own monastery and be able to teach that message of like inclusivity and acceptance to all, like in his own method, and like have his own style, like his own Miyagi-Do?
I could see that. I could see that developing. Yeah.
Like if he needed money or resource for anything, like if he's a monk, that's the only thing I could really think of. Or he's going to donate it to somewhere else. Like, I'm going to make money to Robin Hood and give to other people, except not stealing it from others.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A lot of times, like with those types of, like, I don't know, like I'm not at all worried about like my personal like wealth. Like these types of like going to the Adventurers Guild and becoming an adventurer, I feel like is like a personal growth like journey, like we talked about earlier. Like I need to see the world, I need to learn more things, like I need to make myself better so that like internally it's instead of like monetarily. So it very easily could even just be something like that. Like these are the guys that are going to make like facilitate this like personal learning journey and personal growth. So I'll go to the Adventurers Guild and they'll send me on some like adventures, but it's not for the glory, it's not for the money, it's so that I can become a better monk.
Yeah, you could have been looking for adventures or just looking for things for a while and just not found any, and they just recommend like, hey, go, you know, the adventurers are always looking for somebody to go out. Like that wasn't your first choice, is to go out and make money, but it's kind of led you here. Is that like I've gone to the interfaith, you know, chapels and stuff and asked if they needed any help or if they know anything, and nobody has anything. And
wow.
And nobody really needs the need for me directly. And so, you know, I'm not as
Albertson's pretty good. It's a stable place.
Yeah. I mean, like, or they don't need anybody of my meager talent, you know, like they have things they could help with, but not something that I can do. So I just need to grow before I can become as helpful as I can. And and you could, you're like, oh, well, I could also make money and donate it back. Like, it's a win-win. I get better and I donate, you know, I have like a 110% tithe. Like, you
got to buy your way into the search of fantasy Scientology.
Well, and I'm also cool in the effort to make him more of a like kind of human in the world of D&D. Like, you know, money, I personally don't think that's the most important thing on earth, but I pay my fucking mortgage.
Yeah.
So like, I don't mind having him be like, ooh, you're going to give me 1,000 gold. Like I'm going to go buy some potions and stuff at the store. But no, I like that. 'Cause that's also just kind of real easy and simple. You don't have to overcomplicate it too much.
Yeah.
Nice. Are there any last things you want to highlight for Umarin? Anything we should know as a party while we venture with him? Any questions anybody has about him?
No, that's a good question. I mean, there's a lot that I don't know either. So like, it's going to be a lot of ad-libbing. So we might discover a lot of that stuff together. I think more or less, I think the more important thing is that just role plays wise, I'm trying to soften him up so that he's not such like a one-sided character. So I just want him to be a little more dynamic and a little more involved.
Awesome. I'm excited to see just like how he's going to grow, and just especially just seeing how you will apply everything that you've learned. I'm really stoked.
Yeah. And mechanically, I think he's got some cool shit. Like,
Yeah,
I feel
monks
like it's
have
going to be
cool
fun. And then I gave him the charger feat. That was the other thing I changed. I don't know if I mentioned that
What's
yet.
Tell us about
that. Use your action to dash. Then you can use a bonus action to make a melee weapon attack or shove a creature. And then if you move more than 10 feet while doing this, you get a +5 on the attack damage roll.
Damn.
If you make the attacker hit. And you can also choose to shove things 10 feet away from you if you hit and succeed.
Can you also apply your key to those attacks as well?
So if I get the melee attack, then I could... so I can charge someone from 80 feet. And if I hit them, they could potentially be stunned.
Right? Your movement speed is 40. You dash, which is 80.
If that hits, I get a +5 to the attack damage and can choose to either physically move them or more or less start running into key and just like full on attack mode.
So basically you just like Dragon Ball Z teleport in front of them, and that's sick.
Yeah. And I was thinking story wise, the reason I chose that is because like he's learned to act quickly in battle, especially with the Klangadin's charge, I'm calling it. So I'm saying that's kind of something he picked up from the dwarves, like get in there and mix it up if you have to. But at the same time, he's a monk. So his like kind of default is I would like to get in there very quickly and hit you so that you are like so basically shocked with the stunning strike that like potentially there's an opportunity to prove force and then be like, do you really want to fuck with me? Because I don't have to do this. So I'm kind of hoping his personality plays out that way too. And I'm gonna have to remember that, like Eric said, to play the character and not the game sometimes.
Nice. So you got the Eagle Fang with Miyagi-Do combination charger attack. I love it. That's really cool.
And I'll always roll bad on that, so it'll probably never hit. But I'm gonna try it.
+5 is an ample bonus, man.
Yeah.
It's gonna hit
if
once.
I can't do stuff with +5 and then having some key, then I'm just bad at this game.
It's not you, it's the dice. They're out to get you every time. All right, well, that's the last character is Lord Wizard Claws. This character, I started off like I wanted to just play something goofy when we did this the first time, like something different. I wanted to challenge myself in that way. But trying to revisit this character, I was like, well, if this is like a goofy character, how do I actually like get some deeper like depth, or add some depth and texture to him? Because he's just like, it's a fucking wizard cat. Like, what do you do with that? So I changed his backstory a bit to kind of inject some deeper sadness there. And so he started his life as a like wizard's daughter's familiar, like pet. He, had a family. He was loved. That daughter, Fiona, was, afflicted with some kind of disease, and the wizard was losing her to that disease. After losing his wife to childbirth, like that Fiona was all he had left. And in a desperate attempt to save his daughter, he actually tried to use the cat as an ingredient in a forbidden transmutation ritual. When Fiona learned that he was doing this, she freaked out, which disrupted the ritual and destroyed both of them in the process. And the result of that, magical aftermath gave Lord Wizard Claws his awareness and his magical abilities. So he lived in that home alone for a while, and that's where he read everything in the library with his new magical intelligence, practiced magic, but and that's where he learned his skills. So I reskinned most of his magic to be just like cat centric. So he's got his helpful magic paw, his mini miracles, which is prestidigitation, and then I also tried to color just like he has fragments of his past as a cat before. So like some of the knives that I've created for Billy are just like memories and just like, or potentials for memories, like as he maybe kind of regains some of those. Cause like, I think some of it's buried. So like one of his spells is Find Fiona. And because he's just like, he doesn't understand his loneliness, his Find Familiar spell, he just like is conjuring friends to play with. Cause that's like all he has. But he has his familiar Fiona, who can take different forms of animals, but that's who like has been accompanying him while he's been just like living alone in this mansion. When it was learned that Abius had died, the wizard, the city actually seized the property and liquidated it because it's a cat and cats can't own property. And since Lord Wizard Claus has this entitled sense of like importance because he's like the only smart talking cat, he was incensed and confused by this. And, he was basically kicked out in the street. So he has set forth to fulfill his self-ascribed destiny to lead the feline species to the halls of Cathala to enjoy a life of bliss and Meowvana. That is his life's goal. So the world outside of like Lord Wizard Claw's bubble is not ready for a magical talking cat, however, and he's found it difficult to adapt and find work, which has led him to take up the work at the Adventurers Guild. So his goal is really to like accumulate money to build his own like cat empire so that he and other cats can live in peace. And he wants to basically like elevate cat kind status to like, he doesn't see why they can't be equal to any other humanoid that can own property. He wants his house back. So that's kind of how I shifted it.
Yeah. So does he spend time with other normal cats?
I think he's been out on his own for a little bit and like trying to find work. So some of the knives that I created are like botched jobs he's done. So like he went to a wedding celebration where he was supposed to perform and turned water into lime because he didn't hear correctly. And that was really bad for the guests. Yeah. So like, I don't think he has really spent a whole lot of time with other cats aside from his magical ones that he's conjured and played with. And I think, it's really like him learning to adapt to a world that's not going to give him everything he wants. Because before, that's what his life was. And he also has magical abilities to help him get whatever he wants. And so like he's going to have to learn how to kind of accept that.
As all cats do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like it's interesting that his like, that like his goal is to like elevate cats and make this like cat empire, like, but he hasn't really spent a lot of time with cats. And I could imagine cats that he has seen that out in the, just around the city, like street cats, tabby cats. I mean, I can't imagine him being able to connect with them any better than he can connect with humans. So like, is that like a goal he has? Cause he just feels a disconnect from the normal races. And he's like, only like, they don't understand me. Cats, I'm a cat. I'm going to be with these cats. Does he really truly feel a kinship with normal cats that don't have advanced thinking and, the abilities that he has?
That's a good question.
That's a really good question.
Is it a messiah complex instead?
Yeah.
I think it is. I didn't consider his relationship with other cats. I know like one of the like flaws he has is he's slow to trust and like doesn't trust wizards, especially. Because one tried to fucking sacrifice him. So that's just like trauma. But his relationship to other cats, I think he has this ideal in his head of what that is. But I also think that he doesn't fit in either world. He doesn't belong in this human world. He also doesn't belong in this cat world. But one of the spells I gave him with your permission, Bill, was Speak with Animals. Because part of his adventure is like, I want him to interact with other species and I want him to understand his place in the world amongst them and maybe to get that understanding. And like, maybe cats don't want this and he has to change his goals and that's fine. But at least setting out on his adventure, that's like I want him to have like a lofty dream. Whether or not he reaches it is fine by me because it could be an absolute failure. Great. There's growth. Or he get it and that's fun. And that's, he could grow in a different way. And that's also cool. I don't have the answer to that, but I love that question because it's a hard one. and one that I didn't think about, but I think one that can create some really fun conflict and role-playing moments within the game. So thanks for like pulling that, because I think that's a really cool thread.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I understand completely. Like, he is the ultimate cat, so like he has a destiny. Like, he feels destined to lead these felines because he is the pinnacle of felinery. You know, he is the best cat that could possibly be a cat, as of what he understands. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I wanted to, one thing I did put on here in terms of his like relationship to other animals, he's not like a brave cat, but if he sees another human trying to harm another animal, he will do whatever he can to help. Like, that's just something that's kind of been burned into him. But that's insofar as like that goes. That's the only thing I've defined for him.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. I do like that, and you know, there's a lot of avenues there for growth or self-realization or anything. I think that's very, very cool, and we'll see how he goes, because sometimes the joke characters can turn out to be the most deep characters. So I mean,
well, I tried to add a little bit of depth there.
It definitely you did, and that's why I know you said that you wanted to make a goofy character and wanted to be funny, but like actually when you put it pen to paper and start coming up with ideas, you realize like there's always option to add seriousness and like actual internal conflict and struggle to even like the most goofy of characters that you could possibly have made. So that's a good lesson for anybody, that like don't feel like, oh, I need to make a serious character, so I'm going to make like this very boring serious character. Like, you can make a serious character out of everyone.
Yeah, fun can be engaging and deep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I was doing the opposite. Like, I tried originally to be like, oh, if it's darker and edgier, maybe that means it's more meaningful.
Yeah, and I think it's just like try different combinations of stuff and play around with stuff. And we have the advantage of being able to play these characters again, and so we can kind of look at them with a different perspective, which is a lot of fun. But I'm really excited for this group as we continue this journey, and also like knowing more about them. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that. Any questions about Lord Wizardclaws before we kind of move on and wrap up? There's my cat's
Great
tail.
timing.
Yeah.
I mean,
other fucking cat. Get off.
Summon familiar.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah.
So is this seems like it's kind of his first foray out into adventuring at large.
I think adventuring, yeah. He's, like I said, he's done some like magical gigs. He's a novelty, but
yeah.
Again, like he's just.
Does he think of his powers as best suited for that kind of novelty, or does he recognize that he is a, being of power? You know what I mean? Like, does he realize that he can fight and all that kind of stuff, or is he more just kind of like, ooh, I am very unique and interesting, let's see what happens? I've
been trying to wrap my head around how to like view his perspective, and I'm trying to play it where it's like he is a cat and he just happened to learn these magical abilities, and he had to learn how to talk, and he might have picked that up from just listening or whatever, but so like I'm trying to think of like, just based off what I know from cats, what would a cat do if he could cast Mage Hand and also had like some level of self-awareness and intelligence? So I guess that's how I'm kind of playing it. I've taken a lot of inspiration from Loki, especially now, like before we started playing this, the Loki series didn't exist. And so like I've used Loki as some inspiration because I think Tom Hiddleston's amazing, but also just his Loki's character is kind of similar in just like this elevated sense of self-importance, but also doesn't really ever get what he wants. And so I don't know, I found Loki a very interesting and complicated character, and I wanted to kind of use some of those aspects to bring into Lord Wizardclaws. Cool. Well, that's it for at least that part of just diving into our characters. Bill, do you have any like questions for us from the party? Any, things you want to dive into a little more, or leave us with anything before we wrap up?
No, I think we have a basis of all the characters. I'd like to see how your characters more interact. I know that sometimes we don't really have the chance to have those like side sessions where they're not doing anything and they're talking to each other. You're always talking to an NPC or somebody else. But like, like during the ride on the fur wagon, what was it called? Fur bus?
Oh, the magical fur bus. Yes.
The fur bus. Like, I would imagine that you guys had some time to, to chit chat. So I'd like to have, even if you guys do it offline or anything like that, like, what have you told of each other? Like, what did you guys talk about? Like I think that it'd be really cool if you could come up with, even with each other or just on your own, what you think it would be. I think it would be cool to do it on your own. Is that like, what, like, of the other characters that the other ones are playing, like, what conflicts do you see coming between those characters? And like, as your character's internal like thoughts of them, like, what do they like about the character, or what kind of annoys them? Like, like, give me a positive and a negative. And I'd like to really like develop like that triangle map where you have like the interconnections between characters, and like, are some going to grow or some going to weak? Like, like right now, I would assume you guys are kind of starting off neutral, where everybody's has neutral affiliation to each other. But I think like having like, and you guys keeping track of that is, I don't want to keep track of that. It's not my job, but like for you to think about, how do you feel like in just the one day that you've worked with them, and like, what's your first impressions of these guys? And like, is something like, do you really like this? Are you excited about it? Or you're like, oh shit, like this is going to be a long fucking adventuring party,
Yeah, poor Umran.
Yeah, exactly. Like Umran's like, I wanted to come out here and like do some good, and then now I'm stuck with a cat and this, wisecracking goblin. Like, I think that's really cool. Like, is he going to be short tempered? Is he going to be kind of annoyed? Especially if you're like a little bit less wordy, and Lord Wizard Claw seems like he's very verbose, very wordy, and and then you just like, all right, shut up already. We get it. Like, let's keep going. Like, is that,
yeah?
Are you gonna be short with them? I think those are the kind of interactions that I think we need to, like, me as a GM need to get better at giving you opportunities to show where you like interactions aren't just between the party and the NPCs, or the party and characters and environments. Like, give you guys a chance to, like when we're doing something like, all right, it's going to be 2 hours. What are you guys talking about? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, you should. I'd empower you to call for scenes,
Yeah, I think so.
Or even like when we do a recap, like, hey, what did you talk about your, what you did yesterday, but amongst yourselves? That could be a fun way to like get in character and rehash what we did last time, and then what we want to do moving forward.
I like that. Yeah. On top of what Bill is saying, like, I think it would also be smart to like think of like what questions, because like we're in the beginning, like we just all met. Like, I don't know anything about Umran. I don't know anything about Lord Wizard Claw. I know we just went over our backstories for like each other and the listeners, but this is stuff that a lot of times I like to do in character. So like, so you're a cat. Tell me about that.
Yeah. And we can, I think this is just like for discussion for the podcast and for each other. Yeah. But I totally, these conversations need to come up in game.
That's like, I have something a little planned with like what Zeisel thinks about his magic. Cool. That I didn't want to give up on this, that I want to talk. Like, I want to do in one of these scenes that you were like on a carriage ride, like whatever it is. While we're all like, wait a minute, how do you do this? Like, whatever it is.
I mean, you guys are in, so I'll start up the next session. Yeah. Like before I jump right to it, because I was going to just like, okay, you wake up the next morning and you go to the thing. Like,
so yeah, I think we need to find a balance, because what I don't want is us to bog down on like every transaction. Like, oh, do we have to pay the inn on the way out? Is it like a hotel? Like,
yeah,
I do want, like, I think we'll just it's something we're just going to have to figure out as we go. Like, I want to make room for these types of like party interactions and character growth time and plot. and figure out like what the, because we may just get good at having these like side conversations while we're doing stuff.
Yeah.
When I think the plan to add in even something as simple as you have to go and buy the item you want, like we don't often in our one shots and stuff do any sort of downtime activity, and like that would be a great time because it's going to be like, all right, I'm gonna have to flip through my book for a minute anyways to decide, and then there's a lull where you guys can be like role playing and stuff, so that could help.
I don't know how much time y'all have. I want to talk about that mechanic a little bit because again, it's something we've never done. Like I have never bought a single item in a D&D campaign, period. Like I start with the stuff I have and I get what I get. That's it. Like that's it. Other than like mead and wine and stuff, I've never bought anything. So Bill, are you planning on having, because I know you put a ton of work into the city and everything. Are there like different merchants that have different gear, things like that?
Yeah. So there are definitely different merchants that have different gear. Like there's just like, I don't want to overuse Fantasy Costco, but there's like, there's like your general merchants that will have the basic stuff that you need.
Yeah.
And I don't even like, we're not going to role playing to get your general equipment, like from the general store is just boring. But yeah, in the city, there is somewhere to get almost everything that you could possibly need, but you may not know where it is.
Yeah.
You may not know how many of them they are, but it's like odds are if it exists, there's a way in this big city to get it. And so I definitely have plans on, that's why I built the setting is that, I like the concept of having like mini missions all based out of the city and where you go somewhere and then you come back if you can, and maybe you won't in certain missions. But like, it's not going to be this one's done. Next one's there will be at least an episode or two, I would think, of downtime in between where like you prep for the mission, you do what you need to do, you do your backstory where like, and so we could even have those, I think, if you wanted to, more
like the interludes.
Exactly. They'd be like the interludes from other.
We'll call it intermissions, so it's not an exact rip off.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't have to rip off. But I mean, like it's everybody does. Like there's like they go very in depth of off time activity in the Dungeon Master's Guide of like how to like if you wanted to manage your own company and you wanted to like there's all these possibilities of things to do it, and I think just ignoring them completely, forward leveled, for characters of that level that you could maybe even start. Like, at this level 5, you're not going to be the president of a giant conglomeration, but you could easily like start your own side business doing things or do things on the side or do something like just even like you
pop in for a gig at a comedy club.
Yeah, exactly. Or like be a landlord if you're like, where you have tenants and you come back from your adventure and you turn out the tenants fucking wreck the shit. And you're like, what the fuck? Been gone for 2 weeks. Like, what the hell? Like, and I think that kind of stuff is definitely, I want to
I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Mark, if Umrin creates a dojo, you could have an army of monks following us around.
That'd be sweet.
You could definitely have hirelings.
But like setting his character excites me so much. That's a great plan.
And I really want to explore these.
Like, these things are in the book and they're almost always ignored.
Yep.
By us.
So, like,
by almost everybody. Yeah, they're definitely
by a lot of other people.
But I would say, you want to go out and you want to adventure. You don't want to do like housekeeping because that's a lot of things. I've heard that word. Oh, let's do some housekeeping. But housekeeping is like, I think is offline. Like housekeeping is what you don't do housekeeping as a character. You do housekeeping as a player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like housekeeping could be even like, hey, I needed to buy arrows. I know we're not tracking that.
Yeah.
But like, I bought 100 arrows and I spent 6 silver, whatever it is. So like,
like that's how I spent my 1,000 gold. I was like, I got a list of potions. Are you against any of these? Okay, cool.
No,
I don't need to. We don't need to do it in character. But like, if I go to buy a sweet magic item, then yeah, that'd be cool to do it in character.
That's the thing, and we may just have to like have more communication. Like, if there is like, again, I don't know how this is going to go, but if there's like something we need or something we specifically want, and Billy's like, I actually have like a character for that merchant, we'll do a scene rather than like I went and bought new studded leather thing, you know, like starter equipment or even like kind of low level equipment. Like, yeah, you can do that alone. I would also maybe throw out, I don't know how any of you feel about it, like potentially in those interludes, we could do kind of mini like one-on-ones.
Yeah.
Like me and Billy, Mark and Billy, you know, that kind of thing. Because like maybe I have to go do something and you guys are like, cool, I'm going to go do this other stuff. And then we split up. You can't see my hands because they're right out of frame. Split up and then do like individual short things away from each other.
That'd be awesome.
I was absolutely thinking that, like, we have planned ones that we could even do. Like if somebody's busy or if you guys wanted to do it, you could do like develop an interlude of what your guy wants to do with his time. Like, like we don't even have to wait till the interlude. Like, we can just assume like, okay, when you get back successfully from this mission, what is your goal of what you're going to do immediately afterwards? Are you going to look for that house? Are you going to go to the church and see and give them the money and then see like, is there anything I can do for these 2 days? You know, because you're not gonna, you're basically gig. You know, this is the gig economy, and gigs. You know, you're not gonna have back-to-back gigs. Yeah, and so you're gonna have some downtime in between this gig.
Could we do some stuff on Facebook in between? Like, okay, we're in between this mission. And then just on Facebook, post in the group, hey, Lord Wizard Claus is going to be doing this. He's planting herbs in the garden. And then on the next time we play, we can just summarize all the things. Like, okay, in between, this is what LWC did. This is what Umran did. This is what Zeisel did. We can just housekeep that without having to like spend a lot of story time in it. If it's just that housekeeping stuff. Cat.
Yeah.
I think
I guess cool would you guys be open to that offline play, like the hybrid style?
I think that's good. I like that. I would like to, even like if it's formulaic, I would like to do at least one-on-one with each person in between. Like, and so you can choose, like, you did all these things. Like, what scene would you like to go through? Or even like, if you tell me what you're going to do, I may choose like, this is the scene that we're going to do. Like,
cool.
You know, if you have a really strong feeling about what scene you want to do, let me know. But if you have like a list of things you want to do, and you know. And I may even make up 2 scenes for you or something like that. But I definitely want to have at least one interlude scene. And it could only be like 20 minutes each or something like that. Sure.
But if we take one recording session to do everybody's one-on-one, that's perfect.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah, exactly. And so so I do want to do that. So I do want to do that, get into your characters and get into the mind of your characters, how you're feeling. I'm going to try to give you better chances to do it. What I think I'm going to do, and see if everybody likes this idea, is when somebody does something that's a little bit like something that I would normally give you inspiration on, which means it's good role playing, good anything like that. I would like to give everybody else a chance to bounce off of that and see how they react. Like, if you do something that's really like, if you work really well with a character, something like that. Like afterwards, like, Umran, what do you think about what just went down? Like, because you just saw the goblin trick somebody into doing something that, like, you know, with his quick wordsmith, you're like, are you going to be like, wow, that was impressive? Or like, please don't do that around me. Like, you're being dishonest type of thing. Like, give you a chance to bounce off of that. And there's no wrong answer, but like, because you know, it's almost like those video game NPCs when you play the game and like your little character has a little thought bubble, you can click on them to see their current opinion of the mission, like type of thing. Like,
yeah,
and that's, you know,
I think
that could be cool.
I really like that. And like, even just sometimes it comes out naturally, like in games where we compliment each other on doing something cool. But I think having more opportunities, I think it's also on us too, to like recognize too and jump on it.
For sure. If you have one and you want to if you really want to do a scene right there and you don't want me to keep going, because then you'd have to cycle back, interrupt right away. Interrupt. Just say, hey, I got like, just stop. I don't know, like, Chris, you're editing, so that's on you to figure out how to do that bullshit.
I can do that. Well, I think just with our table too, I think it's okay for us to be able to say like, hold on, Bill, I want to jump in and add to what Umran just did, because that was awesome. Like,
for sure, do that. Feel free. Like, if you ever want to do role play your character and you think we're moving too fast and you're like, you have something you wanted to say, but you never got a chance. Like, I know that we're recording it and nobody likes talking over each other, but sometimes, just we can we do post-production, so we could just like, okay, say what you want to say, and then I'm one sentence into this thing, we'll just redo that. Like, don't feel like you lost your chance or that like, oh, I'll get it next time. Like, if you think what you do adds to it, tell me to shut up.
Yeah, that's a good note, because a lot of times I'm worried that you're like working on something cool. You know what I mean? It's like you don't want to step on anybody's NPC if they're about to say something important or whatever. So that's a good note to know.
I mean, if you interrupt something that's important, we'll just redo it. It's just going to be just as important the next time. And if it's, shocking, you guys are just have to pretend like it's the first time you heard it. We're all, theater of the mind, and also theater of the visual too.
I can suspend disbelief for the sake of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, we've been imaginating for a while.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Bill, thanks for that last piece. I think that'll help our interactions within the group. So with that, I think that wraps up our 0 session 0.5. I'm calling it, because I think we covered a lot of other stuff aside from just characters, which was great. I think like that's okay to kind of tweak and adjust as we go. That's fine. It's going to result in a better game experience for all of us. That's it for this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, and head over to +1togaming.com for more live discussions, actual plays, character creation tips, and more. You can also join us live every Sunday on Twitch at twitch.tv/+1togaming. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.